Welcome to Tycoons of Small Biz, a podcast designed for small business owners, the backbone of the American economy. Join us as our hosts Austin and Landon share insights and experiences as small business owners, active investors and operators who have started, bought, sold, and grown several successful businesses. Tycoons is powered by Backbone Planning Partners, a business consulting and wealth management firm built specifically to serve small and medium-sized businesses.
Hello, Tycoons, and welcome to today's episode of Tycoons of Small Biz. Today is a big one. Believe it or not, this is episode 200 for Tycoons of Small Biz. And if this is your first time listening, I'm wondering where you've been for the last 199 episodes. But we're glad you're here for today, and we're excited to jump in and talk about an important topic. I actually have another celebration today that these two, or our producer Rachel, who you don't see on the screen, and then Landon here, don't even know about. But I've mentioned over the last few episodes, I started taking flight lessons again to finish up my private pilot's license. And today I had my first unassisted landing. So we've got two celebrations today. So we're glad you're here today to join us and talk about these things. So I'm Austin Peterson. I'm your co-host number one, I guess. And co-host number two is Landon Mance. Landon, how are you today, buddy?
Good afternoon, y'all. Good morning to maybe a few folks, but I think most of us are in the afternoon session of the day. So I'm doing great, man.
Good.
Still sitting at home right now, working out of my white padded room. But I have found a new spot to work out of. So a couple days a week, I'm going down to a little conference room and posting up there, which has been nice. But working from home, it's actually been a really surprisingly positive experience so far. Popping outside to get a drink, eating lunch, seeing my kids for 10 minutes here, 30 minutes here. It's been good, man. So I've been enjoying that a lot.
Yeah, well, a lot of people do it these days. I do it for the most part. You know that we have an office here, but I just don't use it that often. And so I think we're actually going to cancel the lease on that. And I'm just going to work from home for the most part. We work with all of our clients virtually anyhow. So it works for me. I don't have any kids at home. I do have a puppy. You do have the kids at home, but if you found a quiet place and they can, respect the guidelines, et cetera, then, it can be a great thing to come out and have lunch with your family and kind of continue to build those bonds.
Yep, definitely. One thing that I am missing though is getting my afternoon steps in. So, I used to eat lunch and then I would walk around our building essentially every day with our other, partner, Luke, out there. And so I'm missing that. So I have not been hitting my 10,000 steps like I did for a very long period of time. So, what a good segue into today's topic. The health performance loop. And to set the stage for today, I mean, Austin and I, we're not doctors, we're not nutritionists, but we are certainly two dudes that have taken their health very seriously for, their entire adult lives. I'm going to let Austin, drive the ship today because I think he's going to have a few more insights than I would, just because he's done some really intense trainings for your triathlons and that kind of stuff. But, the point of today's episode today, I would say for me, it's like letting this episode serve as a reminder to entrepreneurs that our physical health leads to positive outcomes in every other facet of our lives, certainly including business. Because as I look back and reflect on the times where I feel energized and I feel growth minded, and I feel motivated to do certain things in business, those are always the times when I am physically feeling my best. And the times when I am not motivated and I am sluggish and things are not moving as quickly as I would like them to be, I can almost directly correlate that to my physical movements and my physical well-being and my physical health. So I don't know if you have experienced that as well, Austin, over the years, but I certainly know that when I am up and I am moving and I'm exercising regularly and I'm getting good sleep, and I've got things relatively balanced and in moderation, I tend to feel great. And when I don't tend to feel that good at all. So you have that same experience?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so our last episode, if you haven't listened to it, we were talking about the mental health side of things, and so now we're going to talk about the physical health, and they are interrelated. Outside of those who, we want to be sensitive to those who deal with depression or anxiety, all those sorts of things. They can potentially be helped by the physical side of things as well, but many are in need of, whether it's medications or therapies or all those kinds of things to kind of deal with the mental health side of things. The physical side, as long as your body is capable of moving in some way, shape, or form, this will help you, right? And everybody's at a different level, so you got to kind of start where you can start. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Landon. That when I feel physically good, I'm able to accomplish more, right? And I talked at the top of the episode about the flight lessons that I'm taking to kind of work on my private pilot's license, and I'm having to adjust a little bit right now because I live in the desert. I live in Phoenix, right? So it gets hot, and it gets hot early, and the sun comes up at about 5:30, 5:35 right now, and so I'm there doing my flight lessons at 5:30, and the airport that I fly out of is 20 minutes away. So at the very least, I'm up at 4:45 in the morning, 2 days a week to be able to go and do those flight lessons. Well, I don't typically get up that early. I'm an early riser, but I typically don't get up that early. So that's actually causing me to lose about an hour of sleep compared to what I would normally get. And so I've got to adjust, right? I've either got to adjust by going to bed earlier the night before, which is not always easy because your body's not always ready to go to bed earlier if you've built kind of a routine that you follow. Or you've got to figure out a way to actually get additional sleep during the day at some point, right? So it may be eating a quick lunch so that you can take a short nap to supplement that, to bring that energy back. But, I would say sleep is number one. And number two is physical movement of some sort, right? So I'm going to call you out a little bit. You said, what I miss are my walks after lunch. You've got a street and a sidewalk outside of your house, right? There's no reason that you can't throw the kids on their bikes or the strollers or whatever and even walk with them and do it now, right? It's just you've got to change and adjust your routine. Before, you had that parking lot in the building that I've walked around with you many times, right? Well, now it's got to be, okay, what are the blocks set up around my house, right? Do I go long and make a big loop and come back, or do I make small loops around the small blocks at my house? There's still the ability to get that done, right? You just haven't made that adjustment to actually do it.
100%. And, and for some folks, like, I don't know. I'm just thinking of like what some potential excuses could be. Like, if you live somewhere that's really, really hot in the middle of the day, like you may not want to go out and walk because, you're wearing slacks or business casual and you don't want to get all sweaty and gross. Like, you can get a high quality walking pad. I think I got mine for like $200. And it's, if you haven't seen one of these things, picture a treadmill. It's about a third to half the size of a treadmill. And it's just big enough for you to walk on it. And you just turn it up to your speed and you can get your steps in like that. And it's small enough to where you could probably store it somewhere in your office. If you can't leave it flat, you can prop it up against a wall or put it in a closet. Or if you don't have your own office, like I'm sure your, boss or your company owner will, permit you to get that thing and leave it in some common area. But a walking pad is a great solution for when you actually can't get out and walk during the day. So I have utilized my walking pad a bit, but you're absolutely right. Something I was thinking about, and kind of our first topic for today is around linking your physical health to business outcomes. And one of the things that I was thinking about, like in preparation for today, was like, we think about the time, the energy, the resources that we put into growing our businesses, and let's just say that is like 50 hours a week. Okay. Hopefully it's not that much, but we've all been through periods as entrepreneurs where we're easily putting in 50 hours a week. And I thought about this framework of the 10% framework. If you are working 40 hours a week, 10% would be 4 hours a week. If you're working 50 hours a week, 10% would be 5 hours a week, right? The 10% framework of take the amount of work, the amount of hours that you work in a week, what is 10% of that? And that's a really good starting point to allocate time to your physical work. And so that could be working out, that could be walking, that could be playing tennis or golf, just anything physical, hopefully something physical that gets you outside, because we know we've all heard the benefits of vitamin D, right? That you get from being out in the sun. And there's study after study after study that comes out that says that people, human beings, like we do not get enough vitamin D because we are cooped up inside. So get outside, even if it's for 5 or 10 or 20 minutes a day. Get outside, eat your lunch out on one of the common tables, go for a walk at lunch. Just find excuses and reasons to get yourself outside every single day. Because I know when I do that it also leads to just feeling better and happier, getting some sunshine, or at least getting outside into the elements. So I think that's a good framework for us to kind of start thinking about as we approach this. Because, some people are listening, like they're already in a good cadence of working out and paying attention to their physical health. But for a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening, that's probably not the case. So again, my hope in this episode is that, 1 or 2 people listen to this and they actually go and change some of their habits that are, help that improve their physical well-being, which ultimately we know translates over to mental, emotional, spiritual, like all that stuff.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you kind of hit on, the importance of sleep, movement, getting outside. I would add nutrition to that, right? Like the things that you put in your body and how. Number 1 would be water, right? So I'll give you a little bit of a hack for me. I drink sparkling water. Landon knows this about me. I don't know if Landon knows that the whole reason that I drink sparkling water, though, is because I used to drink a bunch of soda. And soda is about the worst thing that you can find. And there are some healthier versions of sodas that are coming out these days. And so those, probably aren't nearly as bad if you've got the sugar down and the calories down, and, you don't have aspartame in them and all those kinds of things that can be really bad for you. The coloring, all those kinds of things. So for me to get away from drinking soda, I almost tricked my body into thinking I'm still drinking soda, even though I'm still just drinking water. And I have my own Soda Stream machine at home, and I get real water, and then I put it on the CO2 cartridge, pump some CO2 into it, and it gives me the bubbles that makes me feel like I'm drinking soda, right? And so that gives me my soda fix. Now, will I still have a soda from time to time? Yeah. I have a hard time eating tacos, a guy from Phoenix, right? Eating tacos without having a Mexican Coke, right? And so I will drink a Coke when I have Mexican tacos, maybe once every week or once every 2 weeks. I'm having a bottle of Coke, and I typically actually will drink half of it while I'm eating tacos, and then I'll drink the other half the next day, right? So I'm not adding a bunch of extra calories, a bunch of food coloring, whatever. So I don't want to get on a full soapbox around that, but water is definitely number one. After that, it's just good quality meats, vegetables, fruits. Organic, if you can do it, is obviously better. Grass-fed beef is a big one for me. Seafood, salmon is great. Tuna is great. Like, real whole foods, non-processed foods are extremely important and extremely beneficial to our health. So it's something that most Americans don't have the right habits about. We eat a lot of processed foods in America compared to the rest of the world, and it has an effect. So just good quality whole foods are a great way to go. It reminds me, actually, you can look this up afterwards, of a meme that I saw where there's two kids sitting on the floor in front of their dad who's reading the newspaper, and he's an older guy, right? Which I kind of fit that category now. I'm almost 50 years old, and you got the feeling the guy was like in his 50s, and one of the kids says to the dad, like, "Dad, all of my friends' dads, take a bunch of medication, and they seem to be tired, and they're not as physically active as you. Like, what's the secret to not taking any medicines?" And he says, "Well, I get a good night's sleep, I eat good quality whole foods, and I exercise, and I exercise specifically, I lift weights," right? And then you see the kid, like, the thought bubble says, "Effing legend," right? But that's the reality, is like, that is not the norm. If you're over 50 years old in the United States and you're not taking at least one prescription medication, you're abnormal. That is not the case for most people. And so, that's the big thing for me, is I'm doing the things that I can try to do to maintain my cholesterol, my blood pressure, my weight, all these types of things, so that I'm not going on prescription medications to control those, right? That's a personal thing. I think we always kind of look for that easy button, and the prescription medications are the easy button to control those types of things, but they can be controlled by our own sleep, our own movement, and our own nutrition. And that really leads us to be a better leader overall.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh, there's the puppy.
Yeah, there's the puppy. I left the gate open, so he must have gotten close to the front door and somebody walked by.
It makes for, unpredictable content is good content, right? I mean, come on. All right, man. So yeah, you hit on some really, really important parts. You talked about sleep. You talked about diet, medication, and just to be clear, like, to close the loop on that. So, there are obviously situations where it makes sense to be on a medication, but I think one thing that I'm just going to say, the American people, I hope that one thing that we are starting to learn is that we have the ability and we have the resources. Now, if we have the desire, that's a different question, but we've got the ability and we've got the resources to really kind of take control of our own physical health, right? And now with all the content and the information and the resources that are out there, I think we're all empowered to be able to make better decisions that are right for our own, physical well-being. And, getting on prescribed medication, of course, in some instances, it is absolutely the right thing to do, and you should follow your doctor's orders on that. But when it comes to, like, let's say getting on medication around cholesterol, right? There are really, productive and constructive ways now to essentially help to control and to moderate your cholesterol without getting on medication. So I think it's a good goal for all of us, like, to be on as little prescribed medication as humanly possible, because it's not good for your body to be, manipulated by a substance, generally speaking. So I think that's a good tip for all of us to kind of consider and keep in our back pockets, especially as we get older, right? As we get, into the age where these things become a lot harder to manage and stay consistent with, because of obvious reasons associated with your age. But all right, let's move on from there. So let's talk a little bit about, like, creating a high performance health dashboard and what that consists of. And let's give some kind of thoughts and some suggestions around that. Sorry, I'll kick us off, and I'm going to punt it over to you here in a second. So there are, numerous apps and pieces of technology. There's wearable technology now. The Apple Watch is another great, product when it comes to this. But, there are a lot of different ways, easy ways now to track important stuff in regards to what we are discussing today, right? So your sleep, your steps, your exercise, your heart rate, all of these things that are really good indicators of where your health currently stands at the minute. So we think that is something that is important, because if you're not tracking it, then you can't successfully manage it, right? So I think that's a good starting point. Austin, let me kick it over to you and add a little bit of color here, and then I want to just make sure we've got plenty of time here to close out with a few things.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. You got to track all the things that matter, right? So you mentioned a few: the sleep quality, recovery, not just steps, right? You mentioned that earlier. That's a good thing to record and to look at, right? And 10,000 is actually a pretty good number to kind of shoot for every day. If you're averaging like 4,000, okay, work your way up, right? Go from 4,000 to 4,500, so forth and so on, until you work your way up to 10,000. Because your body will feel it if you try to just go from 4,000 to 10,000. But it's, you're right. Like your heart rate, like I wear a Garmin watch, and I used to be an Apple Watch guy, mainly for the smartwatch capabilities, but the health tracking I've found is better, especially when trying to train with a Garmin. And so I wake up every morning and I get my morning report, and it tells me, like, what my heart rate variability was during the night, how I slept, how many hours of good sleep that I got, how much REM sleep was there, was it continual, was I, tossing and turning, and then it'll tell me what my training readiness is, right? So last week I spent most of the week camping with about 350 14 to 18-year-old kids, okay? And I slept in a hammock for 4 nights in a row. Okay. Now that was my choice, right? I chose to sleep in a hammock rather than inside of a tent on a cot. And it works for me. It's got to be set up correctly, right? But it works for me. But every day I woke up and my morning report told me I didn't get enough sleep and my training readiness was low, right? Well, that was because the kids, I did actually have earplugs, so I was able to go to sleep earlier than the kids did. But the kids were, staying up late, and then we were getting up early to go do some of these activities, right? Whitewater rafting, zip lining, those types of things. And so I was getting considerably less sleep than I normally get. And my watch told me that, right? And it says training readiness low, listen to your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I had less energy. I knew that I was not maybe eating as well as I normally do, because I was at a camp and it was, the meals were being provided for me. The food was fine. It just was not, exactly what I would normally eat. And so I know what's going on. I follow it, I track it, and that helps me to kind of know what's going on in my life. Now, take it one step further. This is something that works for me. It's not going to work for everybody. But there's this new term out there that gets thrown around a lot: biohacking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I go to this place. It's called the Wellness Bar here in Gilbert, Arizona. That's free advertising for the Wellness Bar here in Gilbert, Arizona. But they have these different biohacking things, and the employees actually wear hats that say biohacker on them, right? And they'll sell them in there. Well, they do things like cryotherapy, infrared sauna, red light bed, compression therapy. They have what's called halotherapy, which is like a salt chamber, which is good for your sinuses. Did I mention infrared sauna already? So, they've got those types of things, and those are the types of biohacking things that can really help even more, right? So if you're exercising a lot, specifically lifting weights, or you do a lot of hiking, or you're running or jogging or doing the different things that, that I like to do, whether it's running a race or whatever, your body and your muscles can get inflamed, and inflammation is not good for our bodies. And so cryotherapy and infrared sauna and red light therapy can help with inflammation, and it kind of helps you recover quicker, right? So this may sound crazy if you've never thought about these things or seen them. I know everybody's had to have heard of cold plunge. It's all over Instagram and all that kind of stuff. So cryotherapy is the same thing, but a little different. Rather than going in water, you're going into like a little room that is very cold. So the one that I go to is a negative 118 degree cryotherapy chamber. And I go in there wearing nothing but my underwear, and then gloves and hands, because it's, your hands and feet are, gloves and hands, gloves and slippers, because your hands and your feet there's not a whole lot of protection there, right? And so they can get really cold and it can cause problems. But being in there for 3.5 to 5 minutes brings your temperature down. It controls the inflammation. And oh, by the way, it actually is supposed to help with weight loss too. So if you're trying to lose weight, think about, if your body gets that cold, your body kind of turns itself on and is trying to bring your body temperature back up to where it's supposed to be. And so it starts to burn fat doing the same thing. And then you go right into the infrared sauna afterwards, is the way that I like to do it. And then you're going into a sauna that's 155 or 160 degrees. So you've transitioned, multiple hundreds of degrees in temperature, and your body is trying to figure out what's going on, but it's releasing toxins, and it's basically turning on those things inside of your body to deal with the inflammation, as well as try to regulate temperature, which ends up burning fat as well. So that works for me. It gives me more energy. I sleep better when I do those, at least a couple or 3 times a week is what I try to do. So that's beneficial. I'll turn it back over here in just a second. But one more thing I wanted to mention. You mentioned the vitamin D. You're right. If we're working office jobs, we're not spending a lot of time outside compared to people 100 years ago who were all working outside. They were all farmers. They were all, doing all that. And so, think about it. Back in the day, everybody was up at the sunrise. So you're outside and you're getting vitamin D exposure at the sunrise, which is like a really great time of day. Plus it signals to your body, hey, it's time to wake up, right? And then the same thing is, if you can be back outside when the sun is going down, that starts to give your body that signal, hey, it's time to start to wind down and get myself ready for bed, right? So blue light, TV screens, iPads, phones, all those kinds of things, you want to avoid those at least 30 minutes before going to bed and getting that vitamin D exposure. For me, the thing that works best, Landon knows this about me, I try to eat a quick lunch, and then I get my quick nap, which I can set a nap timer on my watch as well. So I can get like a 20-minute nap on the floating thing in my pool. So I'm getting vitamin D and I'm getting that restorative nap and getting myself some pool time in the middle of the day during my lunch break. And that helps me to feel restored and energized for the second half of the day.
Love it. Love it. One thing I want to close out with is just the thought around like bringing wellness into your culture at our companies. And here's a really good example. So we are in the process of buying a company in Texas right now, and this company in Texas have really done a good job of incorporating wellness like into the culture of the company. And the way that they do that is by adding 30 minutes every day to the lunch schedule. And what they do is they incentivize their team to go work out for 30 minutes before they go eat lunch, and then come back to the office. And to incentivize them, they actually pay them, it's either like $5 or $8. So every gym session that they log in, like while on the clock, they get a $5 or $8 bonus, right? So that is one way that a company has incorporated wellness into their culture. So just a takeaway. There's obviously plenty of other ways that you can do that. Go for company walks.
Yeah, that's great.
Every
so let
day.
me pick it up from it. Seems to be a little iffy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Your internet's kind of dropping, so everything's a little bit choppy. So yeah, I lost. I got most of what you said, but it was very choppy. So maybe just let me kind of close it up here. So yeah, obviously bringing it into the culture at work can be beneficial to the team. It gives them an opportunity. So like you mentioned, they pay them and they give them an extra 30 minutes to go and get that workout in. So I'll just kind of close with this. So here's the challenge. Set one health goal that supports your business performance, right? So that could be 7 or more hours of sleep every day, a daily walk for 15 minutes, right? Or setting an amount of water that you're going to drink on a daily basis. It doesn't have to be big, right? But it's a small health change that will definitely benefit you personally. And if it benefits you personally and you're more focused and you have more energy, you will be a better leader. If you want more tips, definitely check out our CEO Health Habits Checklist. The information's here in the show notes. You can check that out. And then I would invite anybody who's listening to track your energy and your clarity for 7 days. If once you put one of these or more of these things into practice, and notice the difference on how that makes you feel. So hopefully that's beneficial to you guys. It does make a huge difference for me. When I was getting started in my business, it was grind. And if you want like an example of what you don't want to do from a health standpoint, I would read Larry Miller's story, a book called Driven. He built a fantastic company, but he died very early because he didn't take care of his own personal health issues. And so, but it is a great read because what he built and how he did it was awesome. The big downfall was he didn't take care of his health and he died at a very early age, and isn't here any longer. So check that out. Next episode in a couple of weeks, is your business your retirement plan and why that's not enough. So that's Tuesday, June 10th. That'll be at 10:30 Mountain Daylight Time. Again, is your business your retirement plan and why that's not enough. So we appreciate you guys listening. We thank you and appreciate you for 200 episodes. We've had a great time doing it. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. If it weren't for something that we enjoyed and that we know that it's important to the business community, we just wouldn't do it any longer. But we enjoy it, and we've seen benefits and heard from people that it benefits them as well. So we appreciate you guys listening and taking the time. Have a great day, y'all.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, a podcast for small business owners by small business owners. Be sure to follow us on our social media channels for links to all our episodes and great content around growing, investing in, buying, and selling small businesses. This podcast is distributed for informational purposes only. Statements made in the podcast are not to be construed as personalized investment or financial planning advice, may not be suitable for everyone, and should not be considered as solicitation to engage in any particular investing or planning strategy. Listeners should conduct their own review and exercise judgment, or consult with their professional financial advisor to see how the information contained in this podcast may apply to their own individual circumstances. All investing involves risk of loss, including the possible loss of principal. Past performance does not guarantee future results, and nothing in this podcast should be construed as a guarantee of any specific outcome or profit. All market indices discussed are unmanaged, do not incur management fees, costs, and expenses, and cannot be invested into directly. Investment advisory services offered by Backbone Planning Partners, LLC. Neither Backbone Planning Partners, LLC, nor its representatives provide legal or accounting advice. The content of this podcast represents the views and opinions of Austin Peterson and Landon Mance, and/or the podcast guest, and do not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Backbone Planning Partners, LLC. Statements made in this podcast are subject to change without notice. Neither Backbone Planning Partners, LLC, nor its representatives, the podcast host,